The United States supports Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas's terrorism. And ultimately, Israel has a right to decide what is necessary for its security and what measures are appropriate to end the threat posed by Hamas and other similar groups. It is unfortunate that members have again taken advantage of today's meeting to accuse Israel of genocide.
There are three questions which each member state of the United Nations must ask itself. First, why does the occupying power act in such defiance of the international community, even though it is in contravention of international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law? Second, why are the actions of the occupying power not met with strong, unified, and collective positions by this Council? And third, would any member state of this Council allow its citizens to be subject to this type of inhumane treatment by any actor, including a fellow member state of the United Nations?
I give the floor to the delegation of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Assistant Secretary General Janta and Director Rajasingham, for your briefings. Mr. President, the United States government believes that today's meeting is emblematic of the counterproductive role that far too many governments on this Council and throughout the UN system have played on this issue. Meanwhile, the United States has been working tirelessly to free the hostages, end this war, and give civilians in Gaza a future free of Hamas. To do so, we need to place responsibility where it lies, with Hamas, and hold it and other Gaza terrorist organizations fully accountable. Today's meeting, like so many other recent actions, undermines those efforts. Israel has accepted 3 ceasefire proposals. Hamas consistently rejected them. It is not negotiating in good faith. We know this because we are in the room. The simple truth is that this war could end today if Hamas let the hostages and all of Gaza go free. Remarkably, instead of pressuring Hamas, members of this body have encouraged and rewarded its intransigence, actively prolonging the war by spreading lies about Israel, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and the United States, and by handing propaganda victories to terrorists. Mr. President, the most recent round of negotiations collapsed because Hamas drew encouragement from efforts to target Israel with libels and lies, the ill-conceived and performative two-state solution conference, and unilateral announcements regarding recognition of a Palestinian state. Just days ago, a Hamas official touted the wave of recognition announcements as a result of the atrocities of October 7th. This is a disgrace. The government of Israel did not make its decision to advance its military campaign in a vacuum, but after months of Hamas's intransigence. Hamas refuses to accept a ceasefire and continues to torture the hostages. The United States supports Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas's terrorism. And ultimately, Israel has a right to decide what is necessary for its security and what measures are appropriate to end the threat posed by Hamas and other similar groups. It is unfortunate that members have again taken advantage of today's meeting to accuse Israel of genocide. These accusations are politically motivated and categorically false. They are part of a deliberate, cynical propaganda campaign as Hamas attempts to win symbolic victories to compensate for total defeat in war. The United States refutes these allegations entirely. Israel has taken numerous measures to limit harm to civilians and to address humanitarian needs. The loss of civilian life in Gaza is tragic, but the responsibility for this rests with Hamas. Mr. President, The United States remains committed to 1, addressing humanitarian needs, 2, freeing the hostages, and 3, achieving peace. Too often, members of this council spotlight only the first without acknowledging that the three issues are interrelated. No one wants to see innocent Gazans go hungry or thirsty. President Trump has addressed this, and he has said that the United States is going to be even more involved in these efforts. The United States has stepped up support for the secure delivery of humanitarian aid because the international community has failed to prevent Hamas from diverting it and using it to support terrorism and oppression. The United States continues to work tirelessly to feed hungry civilians in a way that denies Hamas the opportunity to benefit. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is critical to that effort as it continues to supply food directly into the hands of civilians. The GHF has distributed over 110 million meals, all while preventing Hamas looting. We call upon the UN to take advantage of the steps Israel has taken, including humanitarian pauses and designated corridors, as well as to work with the GHF, which has demonstrated it can securely deliver aid to civilians in Gaza. As Ambassador Huckabee has said, we support the GHF scaling up to 16 distribution sites to address critical needs. Mr. President, just last week, this council heard evidence that Hamas continues to starve innocent people held hostage underground and on the verge of death. We cannot allow this to happen. We must hold Hamas accountable. The United States has made clear on multiple occasions that Hamas must be removed from power. As long as it remains, there will not be peace, not for Israel and not for the Gazans who deserve to begin a new chapter free of Hamas. The United States calls upon members of the Security Council and all countries to demand that Hamas immediately release all hostages, living and dead, and lay down its weapons and end this terrible conflict. I thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank the delegation of the United States for their statement. I give the floor to the delegation of Guyana.
Mr. President, thank you for convening this meeting with the urgency that the situation demands. I also thank Assistant Secretary General Janta and Mr. Rajasingham of OCHA for the information provided. Mr. President, after months of public expressions from various Israeli officials, we are confronted with the decision of the Israeli Security Cabinet to occupy Gaza City by 7th October 2025. The implementation of this decision will engender the forcible displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and would further undermine the two-state solution. We call on Israel to reverse this reprehensible decision. In both Gaza and the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, we are witnessing in real time and on a daily basis decisions and actions that violate international law and threaten regional and international peace and security. It is striking, Mr. President, that Israel continues to announce to the world beforehand, including in this council, decisions that would violate international law if implemented. We have witnessed this with UNRWA and more recently with OCHA. This decision to take full control of Gaza is the latest installment in Israel's contemptible actions against the Palestinian people. It comes on top of numerous infractions committed over the decades since the decision was made for the Israeli state to be established in the land of Palestine in 1947. Indeed, Palestinians have lived through the Nakba and the ensuing years characterized by constant violence and dispossession owing to the Israeli occupation. Guyana reiterates its condemnation of the attacks on Israel on 7th October, perpetrated by Hamas and other armed groups. Yet, Mr. President, nothing, absolutely nothing, justifies the collective punishment that Israel has perpetuated against the people of Gaza over the past 2 years. Mr. President, dear colleagues, there are 3 questions which each member state of the United Nations must ask itself. First, why does the occupying power act in such defiance of the international community, even though it is in contravention of international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law? Second, why are the actions of the occupying power not met with strong, unified, and collective positions by this Council? And third, would any member state of this Council allow its citizens to be subject to this type of inhumane treatment by any actor, including a fellow member state of the United Nations? The honest answers to these questions should inspire a sense of urgency in all of us to act now to end Israel's war against Palestinians on every front that this war is being fought. In the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, where Israel continues operations that result in displacement of Palestinians, in injuries and in fatalities, where settler violence has become normalized under the might of the Israeli security forces, where Palestinians continue to lose their property and livelihoods under vexing circumstances, where Israeli officials carry out provocative visits to holy sites, adding another layer to existing tensions, and in Gaza, which is bearing the weight of a humanitarian catastrophe characterized by famine, disease, death, displacement, denial, and yes, impunity. We, the Security Council, must respond to the fact that over 61,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since October 7, and this number increases every single day. In an unfortunate move, Israel has now announced its intention to intensify its military operations in Gaza. With the scale of destruction that has taken place already in Gaza, there are hardly any buildings left to target. Therefore, let us be clear about the objective of intensifying military operations in the Strip and what it would mean for Palestinians who have, to this point, managed to defy the odds and remain alive, humiliated and persecuted as they are. We must also consider what intensified military operations would mean for United Nations personnel and humanitarians who continue to operate in Gaza. Their operations would be further curtailed, since the already precarious security situation would be exacerbated, and the risks to their personal safety and security would also increase. Let us also consider what intensified military operations could mean for the hostages still being held by Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups. Just this week, we discussed the atrocious situation to which these individuals have been subjected, and we all demanded their immediate and unconditional release. In that context, my delegation had stressed that the persons being held hostage should not be used as bargaining chips to extract concessions. Their continued captivity is a grave violation of international law, which must not continue to be prolonged. We therefore reiterate our call for the release of all individuals held captive by Hamas and other armed groups in Gaza. Mr. President, the Council must act in the face of all that is taking place in Gaza, and now in response to Israel's annexation plans. The International Court of Justice was clear in its pronouncements regarding the illegality of any annexation of Palestinian territory by Israel. We must intensify our efforts to ensure Israel completely evacuates the Palestinian territory and withdraws to the pre-1967 lines in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and the advisory opinion of the ICJ. Guyana also urges that this Council act collectively to achieve an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, and to end the violence against the civilians in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. We must also take action to enable conditions for a drastic improvement in the humanitarian situation in Gaza. We have taken note that Israel's military plans involve providing humanitarian aid to civilians outside combat zones. Unfortunately, the operations of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation have already provided us with enough information on what the provision of aid by the GHF looks like: inadequate, dangerous, and limited in reach. The Council must demand facility for the United Nations and its humanitarian partners to have full humanitarian access to all civilians in need in Gaza, so that there can be a flood of assistance into the area in a rapid, safe, and unhindered manner. Actions by other UN member states must also complement Security Council action. In this regard, Guyana is encouraged by the decisions announced by some member states in response to the decision of the Israeli Security Cabinet. Every member state has a responsibility to ensure that it is not contributing in any way to the perpetuation of the war in Gaza, and therefore to the attempts to annihilate the Palestinian people. Mr. President, when appeals to morality, to humanity, and even to legality fail to produce the required action, the Council must delve into its toolbox to save lives. We have long reached this point, and Guyana is prepared to act with fellow Council members to take the relevant decisions. I thank you.